Subscribe to The Honest Critique for current affairs, movie, book, and product reviews. Also, make sure you press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the video series are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily represent those of The Honest Critique and its employees. The following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers. Viewer discretion advised.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode we are recording today. I am honored to have Idan Roll, member of the Knesset and former Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs under the administration of Yair Lapid, with me on the show today. So thank you so much, sir, for taking your time and speaking to us. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I want to start by asking the events actually that took place from October 7th on. How do you see that the gruesome attack by the Hamas terrorists and Israel's response to that? If you could summarize and tell about your perspective to the audience.
Well, I've been a part of many rounds of war with Hamas. Never have we experienced such a vicious attack. On a daily basis, I get news stories and I hear from the people who are having to identify the bodies and learning about the atrocities that happened. I'm learning hideous stories that now reside in every Israeli's dreams and will be for a long time. I've just recently heard about how Hamas executed different people, so many people, and then grouped them together and put them on fire. How they shot babies, how they put live babies on fire, how they kidnapped Holocaust survivors who are now being kept in the Gaza Strip, how young girls were raped repeatedly and very brutally until their organs, their body parts were torn apart, and they kept raping them even after they died. These are stories that we grew up learning about what happened to our ancestors in Europe by the Nazis. And last week, they did just that. They're not even ISIS. They're as bad as the Nazis. And we will have to retaliate with all our force in order to destroy Hamas and make sure that they can no longer threat our civilians.
Yes, so and moving from that, actually, I know that every Israeli right now is united to fight the Hamas. But if I could ask you a slightly political question to understand, how do you perceive government's reaction and the action it has taken forward that? We have seen strong criticism from the former Prime Minister, Yair Lapid, that the government hasn't managed the situation well before, especially. But how do you look at right now?
Well, obviously I'm part of the opposition and we have our share of criticism, but I think everyone around the world was covering the war here in Israel, who are just interested in following online. They should know one thing about Israelis. We stand together united at time of crisis like no other. And we are fully united now, and our reserves are even exceeded the 100% admission. People are just flocking in, asking to take part and to safeguard our country. We remedy mistakes as we go along. Right now, we're putting politics aside, and we're all together in this in order to make the best, to enable the best management and leadership of this war. We have a huge duty. We have to secure borders. We have to return over 200 kidnapped Israelis being held by Hamas, and we have to strike them down, the Hamas terrorists, that is, in order to make sure that we can live safely in our country. And so we know how to put differences aside in such time.
Yeah, and following on that, it's the Prime Minister did not join the emergency cabinet that was formed, actually. Is there any, in the foreseeable future, he might join, provided that there are still differences between some members in the current government?
what our party says and what Yair Lapid says is purely professional. He says, I want the best cabinet and the most experienced people at the wheel. I want people who have previous experience with running the most relevant ministries, and I want a very narrow cabinet that can make decisions quickly and execute them fully. And so we will provide any assistance and backup from the opposition, but at the moment, the proposed layout of Yair Lapid was not accepted, and so we will just do our best in order to provide our assistance and knowledge and support, and we do that through committees of the Knesset. We do that on ground. We're fully committed to this effort, and we will see to it. And I think that every politician right now knows that it's about uniting our country and showing our enemies that they shouldn't try us. And that goes also to the north and Hezbollah. I think that any of our enemies should realize and should know very well that we might have been surprised. We were surprised once on October 7th, but we will not be surprised again. And we are fully prepared. And my advice to our enemies is not to try us.
And a couple of last questions that I want to ask you. One of them is actually, how do you look the situation going forward from here actually? The government hasn't come up with a clear plan of what it wants to achieve in Gaza. But if we can take a rough estimate of what do you see going from here actually? Of course, dismantling Hamas is an option, but I want to understand your perspective of where do you see the foreseeable future in the war?
The military aspect of it is to completely destroy Hamas. They can't govern, they can't be a threat to us anymore, and they can also not govern the Gaza Strip because everything and every attempt to support the people of Gaza throughout the years was just redirected for terror purposes by Hamas. And so we will not allow them to pose a threat on our borders and on our people and civilians and soldiers. So this war is about retaliation in full capacity and destroying every little bit left of Hamas. The day after the war is something that should be of a concern to the international community. I think that the international community should come together and devise a new plan, understanding that a terror organization should not be allowed to hold the Gaza Strip and pose an ongoing threat and attack daily the civilians of Israel. I think that there are different options available, some of which have been discussed in the past, like Egypt, and were declined. But I think the situation has proven itself to be a new one, and it's time for a game-changing event also in the political aspect and international aspect. I think that any country that wishes to support democracies and wishes to support peace instead of terror need to put their efforts and their money the day after the war in order to find another entity to control the Gaza Strip. And I think this is something to be of a concern to the entire world. Hamas is not just an Israeli problem. Hamas is a proxy of Iran, alongside with Hezbollah and other terror organizations that are creating chaos and terror all throughout the region and the world. I think that the world now realizes that you cannot just look the other way and think that Hamas might change its ways. It's not. It's gotten even worse. They're Nazis, they're ISIS, and they should get the same treatment that the Nazis and ISIS got. And afterwards, we need to come together and think about the best solution for the Gaza Strip.
The last thing I want to ask you before I let you go is, as a former deputy foreign minister, how do you see the international support that Israel has been able to rally? And what's the international community's response has been throughout? How do you see this?
I think we've gotten immense support by the international community. Not all of it, of course, but some of the biggest nations have come here in order to support us and have done so in many different ways. And I truly appreciate all of our friends around the world. I do, however, want to point out that the war has just started, and we will need this continuous support also a week from now, 2 weeks from now, however it takes. War is an ugly thing, and we were forced into it. But now we have to do the right thing, which is to annihilate terror. This is something that is of a concern for the entire Western world. I think that if there are any countries that see themselves as law-abiding countries, as peace willing countries, they should condemn Hamas, and they should make sure that they do not assist Hamas in any way. They shouldn't provide rescue for Hamas leaders. They shouldn't provide money transfers for Hamas leaders. This is a time for the international community to fully condemn Hamas and also condemn those countries that are supporting Hamas in different ways. We need your support. I urge you to give us your support, because terror doesn't differentiate between nations, races, or religions. At some point, terror gets everywhere. And so help us stop it now before it gets to your doorstep.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us. It's an honor to host you for the conversation.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you so much.